We are very excited to have, not just here today, not just tomorrow during a simulation a concurrent session that she'll be leading tomorrow, but Genevieve Martin, who is the Executive Director of Dave's Killer Bread Foundation. And by the way, my daughter was like, oh, Dave's Killer Bread, can you bring some bread back for me? So I'll have to ask you if I can do that. We can talk offline. She's the Executive Director of their foundation, and she's really drive creation and growth of national level efforts and opportunities for second chance employment for those with criminal backgrounds. And for those of you who are hiring, we know 3.6% unemployment. We're at full employment here. We're looking to tap into these skill sets, but we also have to be able to do it in a way that's meaningful. And the resources and tools that Genevieve is familiar with, including the experience of working on executive task force for the Chamber of Commerce and for Center for American Progress. These are the types of experiences that having stakeholders like Dave's Killer Bread Foundation and Genevieve are important to. And now we're excited to say that our Getting Talent Back to Work initiative is fueled by the expertise, in many cases, by her experiences and organizational experiences. Hundreds of organizations have already committed to this. She's here to tell you how your organization can commit to this. It's with great honor that I introduce today the Executive Director of Dave's Killer Bread Foundation, Genevieve Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. Am I on? Yeah? Ooh, hi. How are you today?
Good, you?
I'm great. I dreamed of this about 4 years ago, that I'd get to stand on a stage at Society for Human Resource Management and tell people why hiring people with felony convictions is really good business practice. So like The Secret, I put it out there, and it happened. So, thank you. So in 2010, I was hired at an organization, a very small company at the time, called Dave's Killer Bread. Show of hands, how many of you know who we are? Okay, we'll work on that. So in 2010, we were very small. We were distributed in about 4 states, and we make this really killer product that's sliced bread. That's it, it's sliced bread. And in 2010, I was brought on to create a cafe for all of their employees, because that's my background, is hospitality and restaurant management. I'm not a human resource professional, but my entire adult life I've held roles where I had to hire people and sometimes fire people. So I've learned a lot of lessons and made a lot of mistakes, quite honestly. So when I got hired, I needed to build a team very quickly of about 6 people to act as cooks and to help build out the menus and the recipes that our team of 325 people would be eating every single day. And I didn't really know where to start. Dave, you see, is a real person. So if you've ever seen our product, he's this big, muscly guy playing a guitar, this cartoon icon, and he's a real person. Dave spent 4 different sessions inside of prison throughout his lifetime. And on the 4th stint out, he realized, this is getting old. This is not a sustainable career, and I'm getting too old to climb through windows. His words, not mine. So he kind of aged out of needing to make poor choices and come up with cash quickly. So he came back to the family bakery, and Dave told his story a lot, which was incredible. And we hired people with backgrounds, but we didn't really tell that story at all because we just needed people. You see, at about 2010, we were growing 40% year over year, and we did not have the people power to actually maintain that. We would get an order, and within 24 hours, we needed to bake the product and have it distributed to the channel that had ordered it. So we were literally hiring people overnight. And one of the things we decided, because we had just hired our first HR manager about 6 months prior, is who are our great performers? Who in this company right now does a great job, and how can we replicate that? What we found is in most cases, not every single case, but in most cases, there was one defining characteristic that they shared. And that was they'd been incarcerated at some point in time in their life. Not usually the commonality you're looking for or thinking would be your star performers. So we decided, heck, we literally need 7 people at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Let's go to a local nonprofit that serves returning citizens, and let's get some warm bodies in here. We'll see what happens. Turns out they're highly trainable, extremely loyal, and very happy to have the opportunity to make their paycheck on the right side of the law. So that was a win-win for all of us. In 2014, we brought on our first outside of the family CEO. His name was John Tucker. And for about 2 weeks, people kept coming up to him and saying, hey, I'm Tom, I'm Steve, I'm Susan. This is my story. And what he found is that most of the people that were offering up their stories on their own without being asked all happened to come with felony convictions in their past. They really wanted to tell this new person what this job had meant in their life. So over and over, he heard individual stories about, I've been reunited with my family. I have custody of my kids again. I've gotten married. I've bought a house. I've bought a car. I started another business. All contributing both to them, to our organization because they had stayed with us for a long period of time, and to making our community safer and thrive because they were doing good work rather than getting really creative and finding other means to do this. So he said in a very small group meeting when we were talking about employee engagement and all the buzzwords, what are we going to do? He goes, I keep hearing these stories over and over. What are we supposed to do about it? Like, we as a company, a for-profit company, surely have a role to play. But what is it? And he looked at me and he goes, Genevieve, go figure it out. Now, I mentioned my background is in hospitality restaurant management, not nonprofit management, not advocacy, not the criminal justice system. And my background prior to that was as a professionally trained ballerina. None of these things go together. So I took about a year while I juggled all of my other hats because everybody there was working about 12 jobs because in startup phase, everybody's doing everything. The sanitation department came to me at one point in time. I had to operate them. It made no sense. So I started researching incarceration and what reentry looked like and how employment acted as a piece of that, as well as homes and stable living. And I realized, looking back, it's one of those very duh moments. Our role as a company is to talk about employment. It's what we know how to do, and we're really, really good at it. And by the way, we'd made all the mistakes that all of your guts are saying, isn't this a problem? What about that? Aren't they more problematic? Wasn't this a problem? Didn't you have to fire people? We made all the mistakes. And so we exist to help you leapfrog those mistakes, quite honestly. So we got a group together. We invited them to kind of this small summit. And my goal was to get 50 people in a room to talk about employment for people with felony convictions in Portland, Oregon. So very specific area. I told myself I'd be happy if 35 people showed up. Final head count, we had 84 people, standing room only, and halfway through the meeting, my boss comes to me and says, you have to hire another you. I don't know what's happening, and I don't know what we're going to do about it, but clearly something has to be done. So about 5 months later, we launched the Dave's Killer Bread Foundation, which exists entirely to help you, the HR professional, and businesses that you work for and influence to hire people well that happen to have backgrounds. The entire purpose is to say, hire the best person for the job, always. That is always the rule. Veteran, opportunity youth, second chance candidate, or just Joe off the street. Always the best candidate for the job. But often they'll have a criminal background. So in this research piece, what we learned is, let's see, there's about 50 of us sitting here. So that means statistically speaking, about 15 of us have a criminal record. That's about 1 in 3 American adults has been impacted by the justice system. That might be an arrest, that might be a misdemeanor, it might be a felony. But we've all been touched by it in some way. So whether 15 of us actually have or not, we certainly know people that have been touched, which means our workforce definitely has been touched in some way, shape, or form. So if you're not actively hiring people with criminal backgrounds now, you probably already have them on your team. I would suss out who are some of those star performers. So when you go talk to leadership about why this is such a great thing to do, you already have some wins. So we also decided we needed to test our theory that folks with backgrounds performed well and that they weren't problematic, right? Like, we got to do that. So we worked with Portland State University to come in and crunch all of our employment data for about a 3-year span. It's as much that we had automated at that point. Otherwise, they'd have to go through boxes and boxes and boxes of paperwork. And what they found is we have disciplinary action in 3 buckets: attendance violations, policy violations, and behavioral violations. Pretty standard. In every single bucket, the people on our team with felony convictions performed slightly better than their counterparts. Every single bucket. Again, that's attendance, policy, and behavioral violations. Further, their turnover was the exact same rate for the same reasons. And then when we did the turnover data about a year ago, we realized more people were voluntarily leaving with backgrounds because they had found even better opportunities, which means we're doing something right. We gave them an entry-level spot. They promoted through our organization, which, by the way, they promote 28% faster than those without a background. Crazy? It's great. And they've promoted on to great opportunities and then have started hiring additional people onto those teams. So I should mention, so let's put this in context for a story. So when I was hired about 2 months prior, a gentleman named Ronnie Elrod had joined the team. And I remember when I was hired, I kept hearing the story over and over about this group in the ovens department had bet that this old man wouldn't keep his job. And I remember thinking, what? Who in the world does that? And to explain, in the ovens department in a manufacturing facility that makes bread, you're hustling bread racks that are about this tall, that are piping hot out of an oven for 8 hours a day. So this team was pretty much just 20-something-year-old young men. Ronnie was 50. He'd been out of prison about 6 months. He had put on a little bit of weight, and the bets were this guy wouldn't last 3 weeks. So they didn't even teach him the whole job. About 8 weeks in, he hadn't left. He came to work every single day. He came on time. He asked for additional jobs. He asked everybody he could how to learn more about this job. So when our new CEO came in 2014, Ronnie had already promoted about 4 times. And 2 years ago, he had come up to the highest ranking position in our manufacturing facility, which was Director of Manufacturing. So he came from entry level, knowing nothing about making bread and manufacturing, to the very highest level in manufacturing. And then guess what happened? Somebody poached him. They recruited him away. He now works for Base Culture in Florida, so if you're familiar with their products, go buy more, because they hire folks. For every Ronnie, we have dozens and dozens more in our pipeline. We can only hire about 300 people at a time. That's it. That's 0.000000025 impact, when, in translation, 70 million Americans have a criminal record. We cannot have enough impact. But by working with all these other organizations, how many of you have open positions right now? Yeah, that's like 75, if not 80% of you. Just raise your hands, very small. If all of us start to hire people that are barriered to work, whether it's second chance, veterans, opportunity youth, we'll start seeing a massive amount of impact, which then make our communities thrive, they make our communities safer, and they help with economic stability for all of us. So, I told you I'd tell you some mistakes that I made. So here's the very first one I ever made. I was hiring for the cook position, as I mentioned, and a gentleman comes in, he sits down, and by now I've been hiring folks for a couple of years, but I'm by no means confident in this work. And I know that we hire people with backgrounds, but I've been given no training whatsoever. Just get people in the door. That was error number 1, just FYI. He comes in, we're having a chat, he's clearly capable, he can be a cook, no problem. And he goes, but I think I should tell you, I was released about 6 weeks ago from prison. I said, okay, we hire folks, shouldn't be a problem. Mind you, I still don't know what to say, and I'm extremely uncomfortable. And he said, and it was for bank robbery. What? And then I sit there and I try to be real calm, cool, and collected. I say, okay, what was that like? No. He proceeds to answer, thank God. And he says, you know, this is my story, this is how I got there. It started with substance abuse, which turned into other crimes, and eventually I was desperate and I tried to rob a bank. I'm like, okay, I understand the series of events, I'm with you. But I didn't say that. I said, clearly you're not very good at it. Oh dear Lord, the fact that I wasn't fired astounds me. So the good news is, fast forward from 2010 all the way to now, he's still with us. We hired him, he's with us, and he is one of our best performers in our cafe. In fact, I've been trying to get him to go get a different job because there is no upward mobility in the particular department that he's in. But he is capable and should be doing more than he is. But he doesn't want to leave what has become comfortable and stable and what he's very good at, and everyone in our organization knows that. So, again, for every Ronnie, for every Mark, we have dozens of more stories. But it doesn't matter if we know how to do it well and we're the only ones. So over the last few years, we've made it a point and we've made it our business to meet as many employers as possible that do this work to share their stories too. So here's one. Somebody might already be in the healthcare field here, I don't know. A lot of red flags kind of jumble up in our systems when we think about that. One of our favorite partners is Johns Hopkins. They do a little bit in the medical industry, just a couple things. You know, they have a university, an entire healthcare system. They hire thousands and thousands of people. Over the last 6 years, they have hired over 2,000 people with criminal backgrounds. Over 2,000. How many people have been problematic in that workforce? More than 500. Show of hands. More than 100? No? Okay, more than 100? More than 50? All right, seems more reasonable, right? More than 10? Okay. Over 2,000, one person has been let go because of an infraction that was directly related to the fact that they had a background and the behavior that came with that. One person out of over 2,000 employees with backgrounds. How many of us have that kind of odds with just anybody we hire? Right? You hire 2,000 people, you've probably had problems with, well, a lot, right? I will say, looking back at all of our work, we found that when we think about problematic instances or scenarios in our workforce, in almost every single scenario at Dave's, it's been somebody without a background. So, with just a few minutes left, there are two things I want to invite you to do right away. Because we could talk about this all day long. I can't unpack all the things with you right this moment, but I'd like to. So I'm going to hang out, and you're going to come ask me all your sticky questions, because I know you have them. I know you have questions that you don't want to ask in front of a group, that you might feel dumb for asking. There are no dumb questions, unless you ask me 5 times. Then, maybe. But this is the two things that I'd like you to do. The first one is tomorrow, as Andrew had mentioned, we're hosting something called a reentry simulation tomorrow morning. It runs for both of the first 2 sessions, so you have to kind of give up all of that time. I promise you will leave a different person. What we do is we put you through a simulation of what it's like to come back into the community the day you leave incarceration. So it's only 2 hours of your time. Can't hurt, right? So that'll be in tandem with our friends at Checker. We'll be facilitating that experience in Delta B. So please come join us, whether you registered or not. We don't care. We will put you through the simulation. The second thing I'd like you to do is, how many of you have signed the pledge of the Getting Talent Back to Work? Oh, really? Okay, we're going to change this. So the good news is the Getting Talent Back to Work does not require you to say, I will hire X number of people by X time and track all of this metrics and data. What it's saying is, I pledge to think about this differently and understand what it would look like in my workplace, and then maybe take additional steps, which SHRM, ourselves, lots of people would like to help you take those steps. So if you open up your SHRM app right now, the very first thing on that home page is a banner that says, Getting Talent Back to Work, take the pledge. I'd like to challenge you to take that pledge. SHRM, just a couple of months ago, launched the Getting Talent Back to Work pledge, and the most comprehensive toolkit that exists to help support you hire people. The reason I know this, again, is because I've been doing this work for 5 years, and we started building the same toolkit about 4 months ago. And then we got a call from our friends at SHRM and at Coke and said, hey, we're doing this really cool thing. Would you sign on to it? I said, well, what is it? And they said, it's this great toolkit. Here's all the steps, all the things. And I said, great. You just saved me thousands of dollars because we were in the middle of doing the same thing. So thank you very much. It is the best tool. It has a ton of resources for organizations you can reach out to. I will make myself available at the end. Our friends at Checker will probably come hang out with me. I'm putting them on the spot and telling them they're going to do that so that we can answer all of those questions. Because none of these things need to be the barrier to getting the best talent on your team. Thank you very much for hanging out with me.